Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our latest law enforcement social media webinar, Securing Your Social Privacy with Tim Burrows. So let's start off with the agenda. First off, our speaker, Tim Burrows, is going to go through a look at best practices for training for this type of, for security for the agency and privacy for the officers of that agency when using social media. What and when to share information, the importance of leveraging mass notification tools to stay connected and share critical information. We'll also have Paul Zach, who's also on the line. He'll give you a Nixle overview, cover a few related success stories, and we'll open up to Q&A. As always, if you guys have questions or comments, you can do so by going to the GoToWebinar panel on your screen, selecting the questions drop-down, and submitting your question to all panelists. As a reminder, we are recording this session, and we will be sending out the slides to anyone who has registered or attended this webinar with the recording. If you'd like to tweet at us, you can tweet us at Everbridge or at Nixle. And use the hashtag LESM, and we'll even try and retweet and comment to some of the good tweets. So now I'm going to hand it over to Tim Burrows. Tim Burrows, he runs the police podcast, the LESM conference. He participates with 1266 for training in law enforcement, and he's been an officer. He's a retired officer of 25 years. So Tim, you may begin.
Michael, thank you very much. I just want to make sure that we can, you guys can all hear me okay. And I'm going to pull up my screen share, and we should be seeing the screen, social media and your privacy. Sounds good? And how's it look?
Looks great. Great screen. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, first of all, I would really like to thank Everbridge for allowing me this opportunity to talk about something that I absolutely love, and that is the internet and, of course, social media. With that love, though, comes the practical thought that if we're not careful, we can actually do more damage to ourselves and our agencies than most people would ever have any belief that could happen. Simply put, the average person that's out there using social tools, they can hide who they are. It doesn't matter. We can do the same thing. But what ends up happening is people can say some very corrosive and very evil things on the internet and not have to worry about. Well, law enforcement doesn't have that same luxury. And in fact, I'm quite happy that we don't. We have to watch what we say. We have to be careful how we share, where we share, and watching ourselves in terms of everything we say and everything we do. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as the presentation goes on. So thank you again to Everbridge and Nixle for allowing me this opportunity. And I hope you take away some information from this that will not just help you, but also help your community and your agency. As was mentioned, I did 25 years of policing. I was a sworn police officer, and the last few years of my career was spent primarily in the tech area of using social media and communications on behalf of my agency and myself in my private capacity. So let's get started. First thing we really need to look at is what I'm going to try to cover here is explain to you what you are on the internet. And it is different than what you are in real life. Hopefully they do have somewhat of a mirror, but you can't always control what you are. You are literally a mistake waiting to happen. And that goes for the agencies and for the officers. Agencies have to look at the fact that their officers will make mistakes. Agencies will also make mistakes. Be prepared for that, and when you're always thinking you are a mistake waiting to happen and somebody is going to maximize or capitalize on your mistakes, it'll probably put you in a better mindset to make sure you are staying really, really aware and aggressively checking your information. I like to say that you need to think like a criminal, and it's easy in our occupation because most of the time we're trying to track down the criminal, so we try to think how they think, what would they do, where would they go. You put your mindset like that, and it helps protect you. And then finally, we're going to talk about some social safe practices. So for officers, understand you are not what you think you are when it comes to the internet. In real life, you probably are a brother, a husband, a father, a mother, a son, daughter. In working, you're an administrator, you're an officer, you're a deputy, cop, grunt, whatever you want to call yourself, and how you identify yourself doesn't always translate well into the internet. In some cases, in some parts and roles of the occupation, you may not want to let any of that information out there. And it's very important to understand that Whatever does go out on the internet, at some point in time, in some way, you have to understand it can track back to you, and people will literally be trying to build profiles on you. We used to hear that Hell's Angels or the 1% motorcycle clubs were always trying to build books on undercover officers. Well, we've made it really simple for them to build books not just on undercover officers, but on our frontline officers. Our graduation ceremonies are now often streamed live, or pictures are put up on the internet, making it very easy for people to gather information and literally make a social and digital book on the new officers that are coming into law enforcement. So what you think you are and what the internet sees you are two different things. You literally are what the internet says you are. And no, it is not fair. But you have to understand that what gets put out there on the internet is for a global audience. It's no longer what we used to have as a close, tight-knit circle of friends or relatives. The global community can come and take a look and see who you are. And that is going to be based on what you've put out on the internet and what the internet has said about you. Literally, people will look for what the internet is more interested, or what the internet is saying about you, because it's often more interesting. What you think determines who you are. What you say puts those determinations into action, and what you do are the actions that everybody gets to see. One way or the other, you have complete and 100% control over those three issues: what you think, what you say, and what you do. Where I've seen a lot of officers get into trouble lately, and literally since the internet explosion and the social media use for law enforcement, is when they start to think things that are great to think on your own, and then they start to say them, and they put them into action on the internet. Finally, what is recorded has a major impact on what you are. If you are the one controlling the recordings, and by recordings it can be text type, print, video, image, whatever it is, if you're the one putting that content out, you are shaping what the perception of you is. If you're not the one that's putting the information out there, somebody else is controlling what the internet says you are and who the internet thinks you are. Basically what that comes down to is your intention is what doesn't matter anymore. Perception is the new reality. If people perceive you the wrong way, it doesn't matter what your intentions were. It's an unfair reality nowadays that things can happen that you have very little control over, and the internet says this is what happened. We can go back and look at Ferguson and the events of Michael Brown and Officer Wilson. Prime examples. The internet said one thing, the reality was another, but the perception that was left is what has controlled the narrative ever since that time. More recently, you can look at other events that have happened, shootings with police officers involved. People put out recordings that are only partially or a part of the story. That determines the reputation. That's the perception that is seen, and now we have to get into a phase or a situation of response and reputation management and damage control if the information's been taken out of context. So what you have to do is make sure that you're doing your part properly, that you're not doing things online that you really shouldn't be doing, that you really shouldn't have come back at you. And we're going to get into that a little bit more a little bit later. But what you most have to understand in this world is that to mainstream media, you are a golden cow. Literally, they are making a living off the perception that has been created through negative news stories. We're not seeing a lot of great news about law enforcement and policing in our industry anymore because it doesn't sell. It doesn't sell ad space, and people don't talk about it for more than 15, 20 minutes. That's the new 15 minutes of fame. Where you get into the hours and hours of fame is when things go wrong. When the mainstream media can take a story and take the negative aspects out of it and twist it and continue to perpetuate it and carry it. And they've been having a great time doing this for the last several years. We want to make sure you're reminded that you're not adding to that negative story in any way other than what they're going to be able to try to pull away from only half using what's the reality and what the stories are. So this is a little bit about what you have to consider to protect yourself, and that is your thoughts, your actions, and what you say. Agencies, like I said at the beginning, you are a mistake waiting to happen. Put that in your mind right off the outset, and you'll make yourself a little bit safer and a little bit better protected when you start to think that way, because one of the things that you will do is you'll then give some proper training to your officers, and we'll talk about the importance of that in a second. You are a security risk when you are on the internet because of several factors you can control, but more factors you can't control. Bad people are on the internet and they are looking at police agencies as a great opportunity to get some cyber fame, some internet notoriety, or to make some money off you. And we've seen several cases of police agencies losing control of their data simply because of mistakes that were made and ransoms were created on the information. You need to protect yourself and think how these people are trying to get in. And we always are very good at putting a lot of money into our hard protection. We'll invest millions of dollars into computer security. We'll make sure that our firewalls are in place, that we're using proper antivirus, that we're using outside agencies to monitor the incoming traffic and looking for these bad people and these bad things to happen online. We'll make sure that our passwords are set to a certain standard and that we're using proper internet protocols to make sure that everything stays safe and secure. And like I said, millions and millions of dollars are going into that industry-wide. And all they're trying to do is protect against hackers, phishers, vishers, and social engineers, people that are trying to get into your information. The worst case scenario is the hackers that you never see coming, and then you have the other attacks that you have a better idea that are there. Bottom line is bad people are looking past your hard protection and looking to try to get into your soft protection. And your soft protection is your people. On the screen right now is a bit.ly link that will take you to a website portal. And this is an example of how easy it is to hurt your soft protection. Now, if I was to put up on here, go to this link, tell me what you see, and here's a great gift, or make it something that you just couldn't resist, your soft protection, which is your people, are very easily influenced to do wrong things. And if anybody was to go to that, this is what they would see. Congratulations and thank you. By clicking on the link that brought you here, you provided me virtual access to your device. Within a few minutes, I will have a copy of everything on it and also control of it. Don't kid yourself. This is actually happening nowadays. The difference is, in this example that I have on the screen, it's just an example. And you would never get this type of notification. In reality, people that were able to trick your people into clicking blind links, that were trick your people into loading on malicious software, downloading malicious malware, or even just inserting a thumb drive that they may have found, could be the entryway into your systems that you don't want to have. And then you really hope that your multi-million-dollar infrastructure setup is doing its job. But the easiest way to break into your network and to cause you damage is literally through your people. So what you have to do is this type of thing where you train your people, you get your people to watch information sessions that make them a little bit more aware, that you're providing them excellent knowledge-based training to protect you and to protect your people and to protect your data. Like I said, you need to think like a criminal. Every opportunity that a criminal can take, you have to try to think like them and see where that's going, to see what they will do. Use the example right now, Pokemon Go is a huge phenomenon that is happening on the internet. On a mobile app, it is the #1 downloaded mobile game in history, and it's only been out a week and a half. It has more engagement right now than Facebook. It has surpassed Twitter. It is a huge opportunity. How do you as a police agency use that opportunity? Well, you think like a criminal. What would criminals be doing? They would be luring people to dark sites, to tell people, come down this alley and commit robberies. That's how you think. So that's how you have to think when you're protecting your own internal infrastructure. And in this case, you could actually use it as messaging out to your outward community to help make them safer. That kind of thinking goes beyond what we just normally see. A blind link, people click it. Well, if you start thinking like a criminal, you'll understand blind links are the best things to click. You want your people to stay away from that, and you train them to literally think like a criminal. Because the reality is that on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. I can be anybody I say I want to be, and again, depending on the reality that I put out there is the perception that's created. You have no idea, unless you know me personally, that I'm actually Tim Burrows that's giving this presentation. I could be anybody else saying I am, unless you actually recognize my voice. Now, for everyone, we have to look at social safe practices, and this is where we really get into protecting ourselves. The 5 basics, and this is things that everybody has to consider for their social safety. And why is this so important? Why am I going so far back into the simplicity of protecting yourself? Because you are a target. Now, average everyday people are also targets, but they don't come with a lot. They don't have a lot to offer. Jane and Joe citizen that are working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 to pay the bills, not rich, don't have a lot of luxury. People, fishers, hackers, social engineers, vishers, they're not worried about them. Go and look at the next level of want. Well, a police officer or an agency is an excellent target. You have a lot to offer. A lot of damage can be done to reputations. A lot of damage can be done financially. A lot of damage can be done to communities if their police agencies get attacked online. We already know what happens when they get attacked offline, but think about online. So passwords. Make sure your officers and your agencies are using proper password protection on everything. And I know this is redundant to say, but the number of police officers that are carrying around simple passwords, as simple as their badge numbers, their last names, the word password, just to make it simplistic, it's the wrong mentality. You have to make sure your passwords are strong, and you have to make sure that you're protecting all of your critical infrastructure with great password protection. Updates are a little bit irritating from time to time. I get them on my mobile devices. You do on a regular basis, and a lot of times they get ignored. Make sure you are updating, because that magic little word fixes some minor bugs. That's code for we have found a security breach, and we're trying to help you be protected by putting that in place. So make sure you're doing regular updates on all your mobile devices, on all your computers, and make sure that you're backing up your data. Email for officers. I would suggest, unless you are using a professional account that's authorized on behalf of your agency and you're speaking on behalf of your agency, your work email address is never used for anything other than work, which means that when you are going to sites and you are looking at things and downloading software, downloading programs, whatever it is you are doing, you have an email address specifically dedicated to that for that purpose. For example, I have an email address that's made for my banking. I have an email address that's made for my downloads of online content. I have an email address that's made for credit card purchases. Keeping them all separate keeps you more secure. That way, if one email gets intruded or hacked, you don't lose everything. Wi-Fi is a very, very contentious issue because everybody is looking for free Wi-Fi. So what you have to do to protect yourself is make sure that you are actually on the Wi-Fi network that you believe that you are trying to tap into, and that it is a secured network that is hosted by a reputable company. For example, you go into your Starbucks, generally speaking, you know you are on the Starbucks Wi-Fi when you tap into it. But you go into a hotel, unless you actually know the name of their Wi-Fi network, you could be grabbing onto anybody else that's broadcasting a Wi-Fi network that can now garner your data as you come along. The way to protect yourself of that is using a VPN, or a virtual private network. They are free, or you can pay lots of money for them, depending on what your needs are and the type of information that you're transmitting over Wi-Fi. So keep that in mind. And finally, two-factor authentication. If there is two-factor authentication available, make sure you're using it. Most of the social platforms now are authorizing two-factor, which means that if you sign on to your Twitter account from a browser that's never been used before, you will get a challenge. If you are trying to get into Facebook, you will get a challenge. And what you have to have is a secondary system of acceptance. In other words, you usually get a text message that says enter these 6 digits and we'll allow you authorization. Very, very important for you to make sure that you're using two-factor. It's about the most secure way you can get around things now, because you have to have a mobile device with you or a code generator or something to help you out. Final way to protect yourself online, and this is so important for law enforcement to understand. Your First Amendment protection, or your charter protection, whichever country you're in and you're watching this from. For simplicity's sake, we're going to just make a blanket statement. Forget it. First Amendment protection does not apply to you. And I know that's kind of bold and courageous to say, and some of you will argue, well, I have my First Amendment rights, and you are absolutely correct. You do. But with every right comes responsibility. You are held to a higher standard in law enforcement, and that's with good reason. You have accepted a position of great authority and great power. With that great authority and that great power comes a greater responsibility. You have to be the standard. You have to be the minimum standard for what is acceptable in this world, which means that you can't be on social media portraying divisive opinions. You can't get into arguments. You can't use blue humor. Even if you think that you have set yourself up privately on social media as an entity not of law enforcement, if any one person knows what your occupation is, you are subject to everybody knowing what you do. Literally, there's a time and place for everything, and the internet is rarely the time or place for any of those things. We've seen this recently in the shootings that occurred in Baton Rouge and in Minnesota. A lot of officers got into online arguments over Black Lives Matter, over Blue Lives Matter, over All Lives Matter. Expert opinion on what was happening and why people were so messed up in their thinking. Yes, you do have that right to say those things, but think of the long-term ramifications and outcomes. If it becomes a personal, non-objective opinion, or if it's arguments that you're creating with these people, it doesn't take anything for someone to screenshot it and use it out of context and make you look very bad. It's a few of the things that have happened over the last couple of years. Our posts on Facebook, our posts on Twitter, our snaps, Instagram pictures, are they really worth losing your career over, losing your pension over, losing your house over, getting sued? It's not worth it. In some of these cases, I'll admit, officers have been rehired because of knee-jerk reactions, but think of what's happened in the meantime, from loss of occupation to an arbitrator putting you back in place, and there's never a guarantee that the arbitrator is going to help you. So you have to understand, when you do post, make sure you're posting for the proper reasons. If you're going to give an opinion, it's an expert opinion based in fact, and back up your information with facts. Don't just make it about what I think and what I believe, and that generally comes down to you're wrong and you must listen to me. That will get you into these situations. What happens when you do that, naturally, is reputation damage for your officers or for yourself. Your agency, your community relationship gets strained completely, and you're going to lose trust within your community. And that is the one thing, once you've lost trust, you've lost a lot of the support, you've lost a lot of the ability to do your job effectively. One more step on securing yourself on social. We talked a little bit about passwords and 2FA settings and authorizations. Well, go a little deeper on this. Go to worst case scenario, the way to really protect yourself. If you are an officer and you do get into trouble on the road, if you're involved in an officer-involved shooting, and you don't have the ability to get to your Facebook account, something as simple as authorizing someone to be able to take over your account and deactivate it, shut it down, make it disappear if you're worried about any content that's on there, because when bad things happen, the media will come and look to your Facebook accounts, your Twitter accounts, your Tumblrs, your Reddits. They will try to find everything they possibly can on you, and much of that information will be taken out of context and it will be used against you because you just suddenly became a public figure that became very public. Organizations and agencies, think about the authorizations you're giving to people over the course of their social media existence. You've authorized people to use your Facebook page, you've authorized people to use your Twitter accounts. When those people move on, have you changed passwords? Have you deactivated their authorizations? Have you taken them off as managers? These are all things that you have to consider, and it has to be done. Were they using personal devices to operate any of these things? Have those personal devices been wiped of the content that has given them the authorizations? Little known fact, if you authorize somebody to use Twitter and it's on a personal device, even if you change your password, if there hasn't been an update, if there hasn't been a shutdown of the account, there's a good chance they can still talk on your behalf without you even knowing that they're doing it. So make sure all of that is in place for your agency as well. When you're posting, to be professional, to keep it as high as you can, choose platforms that are effective. Where your community is, that's where you should be talking to them. If you have a community that's very, very active on Google+, maybe you have to consider using Google+. For most agencies in North America anymore, you don't have to worry about Google+, but use the platforms where your people are, that they're going to hear you. Also use the platforms for their uniqueness. Facebook is not the place to actually give out breaking updates and information that is of immediate information for your community. It's probably the worst platform for that, given the fact that the reach is so poor. Twitter is a much better platform for that. Use platforms that you know your audience. Well, go to the next level. Twitter's great, but you don't necessarily know your audience. Using a platform like Everbridge provides with Nixle gives you an opportunity to know your audience, because they've said, we want your information, we are your area, we are your local people. That way you know that the information that you're putting out is proper. And make sure your platforms are secure, that you can use them properly from many different devices, whether it's a mobile device, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a desktop, on the go, however it is. Choose platforms that are proper for law enforcement all the time. When we talk about professional posting, like I said, Nixle Everbridge solution provides professional, secure, trusted, direct communication. Having said that, that was my little segue back over to the team at Everbridge. I hope you've enjoyed what I've offered. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you, Tim. At this point, we're going to hand it over to my colleague, Paul Zach, who's the Director of Sales over at Nixle. So, Paul, you may begin.
Hey, Michael, can you hear me okay?
Yep, can hear you now.
Excellent, excellent. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to share my desktop with you guys, and I'm going to jump to the spot where Tim Burrows left off. Sorry, guys. Let me. I need to jump a few slides here. My apologies.
Paul, you're showing the notes section, the presenter view.
Okay. Goodness gracious, I'm sorry. Having a little technical difficulty here. Mike, is that any better? I don't think so.
No, it's a blank screen right now. If you want, Paul, why don't we do this? Why don't I take it and just let me know when to change the slides? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. That'd be great. Apologies for that, everybody. Technical challenges on my side. Anyway, thank you very much for attending again. This is the second time I've followed Tim Burrows, and it's an easy follow. It's Tim Burrows has so much good knowledge, and I'm learning stuff during listening to his slot, and I'm actually can incorporate some of that into some of the stuff I wanted to talk about. So I am the sales director here at Nixle. Nixle was purchased by Everbridge about 1.5 years ago now. I'm here in San Francisco with a small team of my associates. I want to tell you a little bit about social media, about Nixle, about how Nixle fits into the Everbridge family. And one of the things that I think really segues quite nicely is, Tim Burrows talked a lot about how to some of the drawbacks or some of the things that you need to be cautious of when engaging in publicating your messages, whether it's on social media or Everbridge or Nixle, some of the things to be cognizant of. And there are things that can definitely take away from you, the soft risk, if you will. But there is, if you do it right, and if you listen to some of the other Tim Burrows presentations, if you do it right, it can be enormously powerful, and it could provide you what I refer to with my team often as credit. You always want to look for credit with your residents. If somebody wants to take Friday afternoon off, I'm basically like, well, what's your credit? Have you done your job not only sufficiently but above par, above average over the 5 days of the week in order for me to say you've got plenty of credit. Go ahead, go have some fun. So the objective is always to get some credit. So when you need it, it's powerful because now you've got the trust, you've got the attention, most importantly, and the trust of the residents. So, but first, a little background. The slide you're looking at right now is kind of talking a little bit about, describing a little bit of how Nixle fits into the Everbridge family. Everbridge is primarily, but not exclusively, an emergency management solution that allows an emergency manager or a police department, fire department to provide notification when something is very significant on the horizon, some emergency that needs to be communicated with the residents immediately. And on the flip side, Nixle, and usually Everbridge is a little bit more for the larger municipality. Nixle is a little bit more for the smaller municipalities, the smaller police department, or maybe an agency within a municipality or a county government, and it allows for that very intimate daily communication, like social media, with your residents to sort of build that rapport and then to cash in on that rapport when you need it. So you can see at the bottom in the graphic there, you can see the firemen, the policemen, the sheriff. They are engaging with their residents and their community on a regular basis. So when the emergency manager has that emergency that really needs to be communicated, you've got a lot of it. You got the attention of a lot of different folks in your community, more than you normally would have. Next slide, please. So here's a map that we have that we use internally that shows a lot of, oh, go back one step if you can, Mike, shows a lot of the Everbridge deployments across the United States. I think we're probably missing a bunch here, but for the most part, you can kind of get the feel as far as the volume of Everbridge deployments across the United States. And a different color refers to different types of customers, whether it's commercial or a city or a county government, so on and so forth. So I talked earlier about how Everbridge is a little bit for the bigger municipalities. Now let's overlay the Nixle deployments. Next, there you go. So you could see it covers it. What do you call it? It eclipses the Everbridge deployments, but they're much smaller, right? Because it's these little towns of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people, maybe all the way up to 20, 30, 40, 50,000, where you want that police agency or the Parks and Rec department or the city mayor to engage the community on a daily basis or a weekly basis. Next slide, please. One of the most powerful things about Nixle that has been now incorporated into Everbridge as well, and when I talk about Nixle or Everbridge, keep in mind you could have Everbridge, you can have Nixle, or you could have a blend of both products where we've actually included some of the Nixle capabilities within Everbridge. So you don't need to choose, do I want Nixle or do I want Everbridge? You could potentially have both. One of the there's a lot of unique aspects to Nixle. This is one of them, and probably I would say maybe the most powerful of the Nixle features, which is when you're just looking to get when you're just trying to get somebody's participation in your communication, sometimes you don't want to send them to a website with a long form, a lot of questions. They have to remember, first of all, to go to the website when they get in front of their desktop computer or laptop computer. And people are inherently lazy, right? There's so many things to sign up for these days. When they have yet another thing to sign up for, and this one's not going to provide them free burritos, they're probably not, they may be resistant to doing it. So this is a much easier way to get people to opt in to your messaging, which is simply to take your zip code, in this case it's 01880, and text that to 888-777. I live in San Francisco. My zip code's 94108. It's a tiny kind of 10-block radius community. I've opted into that, as well as the zip code for my work, as well as a zip code where my mom lives, because I'm concerned about where she's at, as well as a bunch of zip codes with a lot of customers I'm working with on a weekly basis. So now, once you've opted into a zip code, you will get communication from multiple agencies within that have jurisdiction over that zip code. So I get messages from the San Francisco Police Department, the CHP, California Highway Patrol, and San Francisco Emergency Management. And that can be quite powerful too, because different agencies want to provide you slightly different information, which all can be quite valuable. Next slide, please. Now, this is kind of a little bit where, again, I talk about credit, right? So we talk about soft risk, we talk about soft risk and credit. Tim Burrows talked a little bit about, some of the risks of publishing on social media. Your objective, of course, is the reason why you do social media is not so much because it's fun or necessarily because you want to do it or you like to do it, but because you're earning credit for when you really need it. And this is the kind of credit that we're talking about. I've showed the slide before. This is Clayton County in Georgia. All they did is simply do a Nixle alert on a traffic accident. That's it. It's no big deal. But yet, the 6 Facebook reply posts to this Nixle post, 5 of them were enormously powerful. And you could read them right here. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the heads up. Re-elect Hill for sheriff. Okay, a little political thing there. Thank you for the job well done, Clayton County officers. May God continue to protect and bless you. Those are this particular sheriff's department has incurred a lot of credit, and that's what you're seeking. There was a 6th post here, but it didn't make any sense. So 5 out of the 6 posts were enormously powerful, and you could see that the Sheriff's Department is gaining credit. Next slide, please. There's another community in Northern California here, which I kind of stumbled upon. I've told the story before. My girlfriend happens to live in Novato, California, and I think I actually opted into Novato before I actually met her, but nonetheless, it now has a little bit of additional significance to me. And so I get messages from Novato, and I've opted into one zip code, and you could see the different agencies that I'm getting messaging from. I'm getting something from, the first one is from Novato Police Department. It's a PSA, public service announcement, about a gas line that they're going to do some testing on. The next one is from the Novato Fire District. They're talking about flash flood effective through Sunday afternoon. Novato Police Department talking about how they arrested somebody for domestic battery, and again from the police department about a community engagement, what we call community engagement event, which is coffee with a cop and a firefighter. How much fun is that when you're trying to build credit with your parents, with your adults in your community, and by bringing their kids to a particular event, you're building lots of credit, short-term and long-term. Next slide. And this kind of goes also a little bit to what Tim Burrows was talking about, is what you say and what you do. All these little pieces of information that gives residents a heads up on what's going on, things that they need to be cognizant of, or things that will make them smile. This is all about building credit, and it's what you say and what you do. Next slide, please. This next slide is pretty much another graphic of some more messages from Novato. Next slide, Mike. Hey, Mike, you there?
Yep.
Next slide.
Okay.
For some reason, it's advanced.
Yeah, for some reason it's actually not forwarding. Okay. 1 second. I guess I'm having technical difficulties on my end. I guess that's what you get when you do a live performance. So just
no worries at all.
Everyone.
I want to talk. I can easily talk without the slide. There was another slide after this which shows more Novato posts, and one of them was what we call an alert. It's red. Basically means that, hey, this is an emergency going on here. And it was a house fire on a particular court in Novato. And actually, advance one more slide if you can, Mike. And you'll see on this first post, house fire on Manzano Court. I think we've skipped over somehow. No, I think is that the right one? That's right. Leave it right there. Leave it right there. So this is actually a text I got from Novato Fire about a house fire on Manzano Court. And this was actually one of the first posts I got from Novato a while ago, and I thought it was quite curious. I showed it to my girlfriend, who I was actually having dinner with at that exact time in San Francisco, and I said, "Where's Manzano Court?" And she goes, "I'm not too sure. I think it's somewhere where I live." And eventually, fast forward the story a little bit, I forwarded this message to her, because you could see this in that message. It says, reply with a friend's number to forward. So I forwarded it to my girlfriend, who was sitting across the table from me. She, in turn, forwarded it to a bunch of her friends that all lived within Novato. I came back the next day to work. I looked on the back end of the system to see how did the opt-ins grow for Novato for that particular zip code. And it actually spiked quite nicely with 34 people. Now, it may not be a lot, but keep in mind, this is just one message. Another message in a week will probably have a similar effect. And that is how you get credit. That is how you keep people informed. That is how you keep the lines of communication open with your residents, and between your residents and your agency. So this is what we call a zip code opt-in, and that could be quite powerful. There's another kind of opt-in that we work with a lot, which we call a keyword opt-in. I think, Mike, you might have to go back one slide for this one. This is a Maryland agency that used a keyword for the 4th of July, just like what, a couple weeks ago? And they actually, you could see on the orange and red lines how many opt-ins, how many people were interested in what this community had to say, what this agency had to say, and how they were growing their web opt-ins. Then they used a keyword for a 4th of July event. And you can see, of course, you needed to socialize it, you need to publicize it a little bit, but you can see just how dramatic people are interested in hearing about specific topics. In this case, a 4th of July event. It's 19-fold the number of opt-ins from the website. Now, the value here is that you've got their undivided attention for anything that has to do with the 4th of July event, whether it's an emergency or just a public service announcement. Maybe it could be something as simple as, hey, we've changed the parking lot for the fireworks from this intersection to that intersection, whatever it may be. But again, if you have an emergency, you've got their attention. Then after the event is over, here's where it also could be quite powerful. Send them a quick message afterwards. Say, hey, we had fun with the 4th of July. It went on without a hitch. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. For more information about your own community, for where you live or work, simply opt in with your zip code to 888-777. You could also keep this keyword alive until the next 4th of July event, a year from now. So that's an option that you have. And then lastly, I think if you punch it forward 2 slides now, kind of going back to, there we go, going back to my favorite agency, Novato. You can see on the left-hand side, they actually had about a month ago an actual shooting. It was actually huge news because Novato's a little bit of a sleepy town. So they had police action. They put a shelter in place. You could see that on the left-hand side. And then the other value that Nixle has, which I don't talk about too much, is as you are an officer or a fireman on the on your beat in the community, you're not only communicating necessarily with your residents, but you can also communicate with some of the internal groups that need to know about things. So, for example, you have dispatch that'll tell you, all the officers, the firemen, the first responders about an event. But also you can set up private groups, and you can see that on the right-hand side at the bottom, city administrators and school administrators. So I kind of doctored this slide a little bit, so you could see that a little bit. But point being is that you can also now have that internal communication. You're not only trying to get word to residents pretty quick, but you're also keeping everyone else informed that could be that could have some value from this particular information, whether in this case school administrators and city administrators. So Nixle has a lot of power when it comes to communicating to people quickly and efficiently and of very unique demographics. Well, again, demographics, whether it's a city administrator or someone interested in 4th of July parade or someone just happens to live in some neighborhood in Novato. And I believe that is all I had. Yep, that's it. Thank you very much, everybody. And, of course, I'll hang back for some questions if anyone has any.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Tim. So at this point, we're going to move over to the Q&A session. As always, if you'd like to ask a question, you can do so by typing in the questions panel on your GoToWebinar panel on the side of your screen and submitting it to all panelists. So the first question for you, Tim, comes from Lucy in the audience, and she wants to know, at a high level, how do you think we can better, as law enforcement agency, navigate the media to ensure stories are more accurately portrayed?
Well, one of the best things and the most necessary things you should be doing is making sure that you are aware of the information that's being said about you. And that's Google Alerts or social search. Put functions in place that you know what's being said first. Secondly, there is absolutely nothing wrong with making sure that you are producing your own content that shares the message that you do want out there. That way, when you do get that notification first off that something has been said that's erroneous or out of context or just flat out wrong, you can correct it right away because you are aware of what's going on. And when I said social shirts, that means follow all your local media outlets, put your social hashtags in, your names, whatever it is. Secondly, when you're producing the content, you're sure that the content that is going out there is approved and is the right content. And that way, when you put those two together, you got a really powerful opportunity to make sure at that higher level that your information, that your message is getting out there. The next benefit to all of that is when you do that and you share that information through your own social streams to your audience, you get around the media as well. So you can use them as your partner and you can deliver the content directly to your audience without any edits.
Awesome. Thank you. The next question, Paul, is for you. John wants to know, you talked about being able to publish, to different communication paths. Do you mind letting us know what those are?
Yeah, absolutely. I talked a lot about in the presentation just about text messaging, but really Nixle and Everbridge have a variety of different channels in which you could send a message to: text, email, web posts, iPods, text pagers, also Facebook, Twitter. It's really quite a few different channels in which you can post to, and of course, a lot of those are optional. So when you're looking to post a message, you can determine how you want this message to go out, whether you want to go out through all channels or just one or two channels in particular.
Thank you, Paul. The next question is for you, Paul, again. Tim wants to know, for keyword opt-ins, can anyone sign up for those, or are those private groups?
Anyone can sign up. Well, actually both. It depends on whether you want to make a keyword. If you saw it depends on whether you want to make a keyword public or private. You saw my slide, one of my last slides, that showed all the public groups and all the private groups, hypothetical public and private groups from Novato. You can make a keyword a private or public. Most customers, probably 98% of the keywords out there are public groups, something that somebody wants to set up for 4th of July or the Super Bowl, or some music festival that they got going on, or even just something like parents, right? Parents of our school district sign up to Small Town USA parents. But there are instances where you might have a large internal group, let's say 150 officers within your particular agency, and you don't want to plug them all in manually yourself. So you set up a private group, you associate a keyword, and you tell your officers in a meeting, everyone take out your phones, opt into this particular short code, and now we can send you messages for whatever purpose that you want to send it to. Maybe you just want to be able to communicate with them in case of an emergency, or maybe you just want to send them a message every now and then saying, hey, I've got a shift open this weekend, who wants to grab it?
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. The next question for you, Tim, is from Julie in the audience. She wants to know, with regard to password security, would you recommend the use of password storage apps?
I used to be a huge proponent of the password storage apps. In fact, I have used over my years 2 different ones with great success. I have no problem with them. I don't actually endorse any of them now because I believe that there is an inherent risk that if that one password keychain that you're using, it does get out or does get hacked, you will be extremely vulnerable. It's the same reason why I use multiple email addresses. I'm more of now an old school guy where I have multiple different emails, multiple different passwords. I have them written down and on a piece of paper. Now, they don't show what they actually link to. There's a code key for that for me. But if it's going to make you secure in the fact that you will actually use different passwords, I like that. I'm just personally a little concerned that that's a huge target for hackers nowadays, is those 1Password keychains.
Excellent. Paul, we have another question from you, from Jim. He wants to know, can residents sign up for multiple agency alerts, whether it be for one zip code or multiple zip codes?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. You can opt into as many zip codes as you want. I think I've opted personally into about 20 different zip codes, whether it's for my personal benefit, again, my mother, or where I work, or for professional purposes, because I'm working with particular agencies and I want to see how they're coming along with their posts and publications. And then kind of step 2 might be, you also can augment your profile on the internet. You can log in to your profile, and you could basically say, you know what, I'm opted into one particular zip code in Novato, but I really don't care what Novato Fire has to say, so I'll opt out of that. I do want to hear what Novato Police Department has to say, so I will maintain my opt-in for that. So the text part, opting in with just a short code and a zip code, that's just to get you, that's kind of quick and dirty, get you in there, so at least you're getting some sort of notification to people. You can always enhance your profile by going to the web, going to a website, and then starting to play with all the little switches and choices and pick lists to determine, to fine-tune what you want to hear and what you don't want to hear. In fact, just yesterday, I decided to increase the amount of text messages I get. So I went to the web and I clicked on, I not only want a text message for alerts and community advisories, or alerts and community messages, or I'm sorry, alert and advisory messages, but I also wanted to get text messages for community messages, so I clicked that option as well. So now I'm going to hear all the messages that the agencies broadcast.
Excellent, thank you, Paul. And Tim, we have one final question for you. It's from Jamil. He wants to know, how can we directly connect with the public so we don't have to rely or directly rely on the media for spreading a message?
Well, literally, that's going to be how well you socially populate yourself. Using the social tools, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever tools are available, Instagram, Snapchat, that's the best way to get your message out there. Now, what I would suggest is you have a home base of operations. In other words, somewhere where you store your content that you really want shared. And then generally speaking, that's your website or a really great blog. And then you share content out from that. That way, if one of those platforms goes down or you lose access, generally you will always have your home base. So a website is a great hub, or a blog is a great hub, and then use the social tools to find and build your audience online by providing great content, using geolocation services, in other words, knowing where your city is and where the people are that are active on social with that, and then just be a great community partner. Use the tools the way the community wants to be talked to, and that gets you around the media for the most part.
Excellent. So at this point, we are out of questions. What I'd like to say is we are going to be sending out the recording with the slides within the next coming days. So if any of you came on late or would like to share this presentation with colleagues, you can do so. Also, if you would like to learn more about the Nixle solution, go to nixle.com/request-demo, and I'll bring up the URL right now. And someone on Paul's team will reach out to one of his product specialists to walk you through how you can partner up with Nixle at the agency level. At this point, I'd like to thank all of our speakers today, Paul and Tim, for another great presentation, and to all of our attendees who were able to join us today. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks everybody for being here.